My whole life was kind of revolved around that, and it was all I kind of ever thought about doing.
You must have had some mentors, coaches along the way that massively inspired you.
That moulded my love for coaching before I'd even got into this side of the world.
And what would you say was one of the toughest moments then? Okay.
When we moved, there was no one, and we didn't know anyone to kind of help us with anything. And it was quite a lonely place. And a lot of what I did was trying to find my identity and never really finding happiness in what I did or who I was.
But a lot of the things that happened in your childhood that kind of formed the basis of this need for gratification.
It's just filling a void. It gave me sort of a belonging to something. But that came from always just looking up here rather than just looking inwardly and seeing where I am. And I became obsessed with perfect. Why bodybuilding is such a big part for me is because it's all within your control. And it was never about going over there looking for an Olympia qualification or anything.
How do you feel in terms of your anxiety, depression?
I appreciate my life and what I have rather than feeling kind of lost and empty like the way I did before.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Walk with BEX. We are here live in a studio, as promised, for my 100th episode of Walk with BEX. I've been wanting to do this for a very, very long time, and as promised, we are now moving into a new chapter, a new series of interviewing very special guests. I want to get into the nitty-gritty of what other people do in their life, in business, but most importantly, their personal development, their growth, and their mindset. So in honor of my 100th episode, of course, I had to invite a very, very special guest. It is my husband, Darren Farrell, IFBB Pro Athlete. So many of you know Darren very well. If you follow me and you've been watching my YouTube, my Instagram, and all the other jazz that I do, you know that we've been married for 7 years, almost together 9 years now. I think this month it'll be 9 years we'll be together. And yeah, I'm just going to let him take the lead, and I'm going to ask you first and foremost, take me back, Darren. Everybody knows you as an IFBB Pro Athlete. Everybody knows how you conduct yourself day to day now, but I want to go right back to Darren as a little boy. Take me back to your childhood and tell me what it was like growing up for you. Family, school, living in Ireland.
I think I had a pretty normal, really good childhood. 2 loving parents, only child. I did have a stepbrother and stepsister who were much older than me, so they weren't really in the picture a huge amount. Living in sort of the countryside, massively into sport. Both my parents were athletes, so I think the first thing I did as soon as I could walk was I was put into gymnastics because I knew it'd be good for my flexibility for sport as I got older. And then I think at the age of 4 I was playing hockey and soccer were my 2 main sports, but I played everything growing up, and that was my passion, as my parents loved it. I was so into it and they supported it a lot. Education wise, I was always good in school, but not good at school, if you get what I mean. I was never like dedicated, but always did quite well somehow. I went to a really good primary school, which was sort of honed my sort of love for sport. We were very good at like sports. We won everything in hockey and soccer, like at an underage level. And then on to secondary school again, a prestigious school. I went to a boarding school that both my uncles had gone to, so sort of in my family, but also a very sporting school as well. Very much into rugby and hockey. So that was my first introduction to rugby. So I played hockey and rugby the whole way up. I just played rugby just because my friends played it. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. And I turned out to be quite good at it. So played that the whole way up as well. Played representative in both sports for Munster, for Ireland, all different age groups. And that really that fueled my development, because that was all I kind of did and all I wanted to do was sports. Education kind of took a back seat, but still got done as a result of sport. So yeah, my whole life was kind of revolved around that, and it was all I kind of ever thought about doing. University choices were based on where I would play hockey and where I would play rugby, sports scholarships. And that took me right up until I was sort of 22, 23. somehow getting myself 2 master's degrees through the process of getting into it. So I studied economics, and then a master's in international business, and then a master's in nutrition. So.
Okay, so from the age of 4 till about 23, lived and breathed sport, team sports specifically. And you mentioned that you weren't very good in school, but somehow you kind of got through. So tell me a bit more about that, because you can't get by in school without getting the grades. So you obviously had an aptitude for sport, and to a degree you had an aptitude for academics or academia. So it doesn't just come by from you just kind of coasting through with sport. You must have been able to get the grades. So what kind of skills and attributes did you have that you applied then to education in the traditional sense?
I say that I wasn't really good at school because I didn't really have a care for it, you know. I wasn't concerned with grades or anything like that, but from a young age I was always really good at maths. My granddad had taught me math before I could do anything else. So I had a passion for maths. So, you know, in school, that was probably the only subject I kind of took seriously. It made sense in my head, you know, I'm a very logical person. So it made sense, like X plus Y equals, and you work out these things. So I had done maths, physics and applied maths. So it was like 3 of my main subjects. So all of those I did really well in. And the other ones I just kind of winged it. I happen to have a pretty good memory. So
the aptitude for math, and in terms of being able to work things out logically, you applied that to things like what, English and other subjects that you had to pass?
I think, like, I'm not a stupid person, so when it came to English, I was able to, anything like English where it was like understand, like, you know, taking a play and putting it into your own context and stuff like that, I could do that, no problem. I was fine. It was other subjects, like anything that required just memory, it would often be just the case that I would, you know, maybe study for a day before the exam and just quickly brush through everything. And when I'd see a question with a word in it that would just spur my memory, I'd just be able to picture what I'd seen in front of me and just be able to rewrite it.
Would you say you've got a photographic memory then?
I have been tested, and I have part of a partial, somewhere along the lines of it. So it came in handy for that. But that's where my disagreement with sort of the education system comes in, the fact that, you know, someone like me could breeze through school and I couldn't tell you anything about any of those subjects a week later, but I was able to come out of them with, you know, A pluses on all of those tests.
Okay, so passion for sport, not a love for school, but managed to get through a degree and 2 masters and still placed really highly in sport. And like you mentioned earlier, your academia and where you went to school was all determined by the sport and the club you played for.
Even where I lived, you know, I moved to Dublin on a scholarship. That's why I chose to do my master's, the master's I did, and I chose to go to Dublin Business School to do my master's in international business. It had nothing to do with the master's. I didn't really know a huge amount about it. I didn't do any research into it. It was the best club in Ireland were in Dublin at the time, and I'd contacted them and they wanted me to come play for me. You know, they set me up. They paid me to be up there, and I think that's where my passion for coaching came through this. You know, with playing hockey at a high level in Ireland, it's not a professional sport, and often when you play for Ireland and stuff, you pay to play. You know, you get selected, but then there's fundraising events to send you away to tournaments and things like that. So I always understood that, like, coaches I had were giving up their time. They weren't getting paid huge amounts, if they were even getting paid at all. They were giving to us to teach us. So it was something that I took on from probably the age of like 16. I coached sort of, you know, camps and things like that, but I kept that going. And moving to Dublin then, when I went to this club, they set me up with jobs in coaching at higher levels. So I coached quite a prestigious senior girls team, coached the club's under 14 team, and then from there I went through to coach at provincial and international level, and then on to it was a development scheme for Irish hockey coaching. It was called Tricks for Sticks, and it was going into schools that were never exposed to playing hockey and, you know, teaching them how to play. And it was like their way of like looking for kids who had a really good, you know, skill set they may have not known the sport, but they had the hand-eye coordination skill to pick it up. And, you know, that program has since gone on to produce lots of Irish internationals who never would have been found. So I think that molded my love for coaching before I'd even got into this side of the world.
And looking back now, would you say you preferred the coaching aspect at that age, or was your heart still in the professional athlete in you? Much
like it is now, it's both. There was 2 sides to me. I loved the development as a coach. I loved the tactician part of it, teaching kids skills. But then when it came all to games, like the tactics of games and stuff like that, I even went to America, coaching out there for a while. I did love it, but at the same time, I don't think I loved it more than playing myself. They kind of went hand in hand, and getting to play at the levels I did play, and the coaches I was exposed to being coached by, I was able to take that and then give to younger kids. Like, so often, the club I played from Monkstown, we would train like 4 nights a week, and then on a Friday night, I was head coach of the under-14s, and 2 of the other guys from the team were coach as well, and we would just put these 12, 13-year-old boys through the sessions we were doing, and they were picking up those skills that we were doing at the highest level at that age, and that was
pretty impressive.
Yeah, pretty
impressive. So throughout all of this, then to be able to reach that level of both coaching semi-professional athletes or amateur athletes, and actually being at that level of sport yourself, you must have had some mentors, coaches along the way that massively inspired you. Through your childhood, who would you have said would have been some of your biggest inspirations, and kind of kept you on track with both those aspects?
I think nearly everyone who's from where I'm from in Ireland, in Cork, who played for the club I did, they'd all say the same person. Reg Tracy.
Makes you quite emotional. Okay. Tell us about Reg.
I think from like the age of 4 until 10, he would have coached Sunday hockey. I don't know why I'm...
Take your time.
But yeah, he would have coached Sunday hockey, which was just out of his own time, teaching us all tricks, skills, every 3 hours every Sunday.
Just for the love of it, because he loved it, and he wanted you kids to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And love the sport as well. And is Reg still with us? No. Okay. But he clearly had a massive impact on you. And you mentioned earlier that both your parents were athletes. So your dad played in sports, your mum played in sports, and it sounds as though they were very much keen for you to continue down that route. But I'm guessing there were other people along the way that massively inspired you, like Reg. You mentioned your granddad. Tell us about your granddad.
He was just a typical strong character, very much. From a young age, he looked after me a lot, so we had a lot of time bonding. So my parents both worked, so after school he'd pick me up and I'd go back to his, and he'd just doing odd jobs around the place and fixing motorbikes and things.
Typical Irishman.
No, both my uncles have a huge motorbike collection, and a large amount of them would still be in my grandparents' house. They had a big, huge garage, so he'd be out there fixing them for them and doing stuff like that. And he was always a very intelligent man, so he would teach me. He'd take out the abacus initially when I could before I could even read, I think, and he'd teach me maths and the abacus. And then we just spend a lot of time together, fishing, things like this.
Nice. So you've got Granddad, you've got Reg. Anybody else along the way? Teammates, other kind of athletes that you got to maybe play alongside that were massively inspirational to you, or, inspired you in some way to progress in your career in sports?
Yeah, I was lucky that, from a young age playing in the club I did, C of I, were one of the best teams in the country. So there was always, we'd go watch the bigger games and the better players would be there. And then I was brought into the sort of senior setup at the age of 13. So I was still only a boy when I was playing at the highest level in club level. So there was, on our team, there was, 6, 7 Irish internationals. So, wow. Yeah, you're thrown in at the deep end.
That's a lot of pressure for a young child.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, but we never saw it that way. It was just, you felt so privileged to be playing alongside these guys you watched, we would have watched them playing every week, and then to get to be in the same training with them, and it was a privilege and a huge development opportunity for us.
Okay, so taking that aspect then, at the age of 13, being at that elite level and being put into those teams at such a young age, what do you think being in those team environments taught you in sport as an athlete? How did that develop your mindset? You know, what were some of the really great things that happened, and what did you find challenging being at that age? Because that's tough, that's brutal. That must have been a lot of, you know, practicing in the evenings, you know, being with the team matches all week.
Yeah, like
you were playing 2 sports at one time.
Yeah, like I think from the age of, from 13 onwards, I played 2 sports very, very at a high level. And then when I was in a boarding school, so I would have been training. Monday would have been, I would have had a rugby training session. Tuesday, I would have had a hockey training session with school. And then I'd get picked up by one of my parents and bring me back to my club to do training that night for hockey. Wednesday, I'd probably play 1, if not 2 matches between hockey and rugby. Thursday would be rugby and then hockey training that night with my club. And then Friday would be hockey training with school. And then Saturday, there was sometimes I played 3 games on a Saturday.
That's a lot.
Yeah, like looking back on it was too much, and you know, I seen there was detrimental sides to that as well through injuries and stuff like later on down the line, you know, and there was studies done. I think actually not long after that, when I was like 17, 18, they introduced new rules within Hockey Ireland to increase the age of that kids could play at senior level, so you couldn't play at the highest level till you were 16.
Okay, so there are systems in place now to support young athletes. And what would you say was one of the toughest moments then during that time? Looking back now, can you remember a moment where you were like, bloody hell, that was really hard? Or it led to an injury or to burnout, or, you know?
There was nothing really such as that. There was definitely a pivotal moment for me when I think I was 13. It was my first year going for Munster, which is like the province. So you have like the 6 counties of Munster. And you've then there's a provincial tournament where Munster, Leinster, and Ulster play each other. It was very prestigious. My first year going for trials with Munster, I was like a shoe-in for this team. You know, I was known well around not just Munster but around Ireland as being one of the better players for my age level, and everyone was talking about me playing. And I went through the trial system, and I think the second last trial I got dropped for not being fit enough, which was true, you know. And I remember that season I had broken my thumb not so long before the trial, so I hadn't been playing or doing anything for like 8-9 weeks prior. And I went to these things, and they were like, "You're a very good player, but your fitness levels aren't up there." And you know, and that was the first moment where I was like, "This is something that I could control." So that next year, I ran every day. I joined the gym. I ran every night after supervised study in school. I ran laps, and the following year came back. Went through the same fitness things. The bleep test, I'm sure a lot of people know, beat the bleep test, was like the fittest on the team, and I was never not selected again for a provincial team.
That was a turning point for you.
Yeah.
It was like,
I think that's kind of as well why I look back at it and connect the two, as why bodybuilding is such a big part for me, is because it's all within your control. And you know, that told me that was something that was in my control. It wasn't like, you know, you're just not good enough. It was, you know, fitness is up to you. You put in the work, you get the result there.
Interesting. Okay, so that kind of leads me on to then, you mentioned injuries and you've touched on bodybuilding. So where did the shift happen where you decided to leave that competitive sport or sports and move into bodybuilding? Because everybody now knows you as Darren the bodybuilder. Not many know you as Darren the athlete for rugby and hockey. So where did that shift occur?
From sort of the age of 19 to 23, when I retired from both sports, I had so many injuries. Whether that's from, you know, overexposure to training and stuff as a young age and burnout, who knows, or else just bad luck. A lot of the injuries were bad luck, you know, getting hit with a ball and breaking out a thumb, you know.
Okay, go on. List off some of the injuries that you've had, because we have conversations on a daily, and then I suddenly realise there's another injury, a broken bone, something. You're probably in and out of hospital so many times.
Second home.
Okay.
Broken knuckles, hands, wrist, broken sternum in rugby, broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, cruciate ligament in my knee, hamstring tears, everything. So like the ones that eventually stopped me playing were my knee with rugby. It became too much of a risk to then continue playing. Like it was, because I still wanted to be playing hockey, it was, if I get a knock on the knee, which is more likely in rugby, I could be out for a very long time again, having had ACL reconstruction. And then finally what did it was a separation of my AC joint in my shoulder that was so bad that, I was given two choices by the doctors, were put it in a sling and let it sit for, I think it was two months, and hope that it kind of heals, or get some metal put in there to replace it. But then they told me I'd never have full range of motion in there again. So I did that, and that injury took me out of a big tournament that summer. Took me away from a lot of things, and I went about 6 months not playing, and I kind of realized, what this was kind of when I was going through the shift of everything. I'd done my degrees, I'd done my masters, and I'd started, getting into the gym more then, because I wasn't allowed to play, so I was doing spinning. Spinning was the thing I was into. I was doing spinning, and I was in the gym a little bit, and I started getting...
Weren't you a spin instructor as well?
Yeah, when I first did my first masters, I did a qualification to become a PT. And I started working as a PT, and then that's when I started getting into nutrition, because I worked in a private PT studio where there was 2 owners and me in there, and it was a private gym. But they would manage nutrition for all the clients as well. So that's when I got the opportunity, exposure to doing nutrition, and that's where that love came from.
Did that lead you on to your Masters in Nutrition?
Yeah, that led on to that. So when I was doing that, I was obviously injured and not playing, and I was getting more into that side of things. And in this period of time, I think I came to the realization that, I've been 10 years at the very highest level playing this sport. Maybe there's more to life, and, kind of realized that I kind of had enough of it as well, that it was holding me back from other aspects of my life. So I made the decision just not to go back then.
It's quite a hard thing to do when something's been your identity from the age of about 4 or 5. Did it feel hard at the time, or do you think, looking back on reflection, that was a big transitional moment for you in your life where you had to say goodbye to one thing and move forward into the unknown? Like you said, your whole life had been set up for you to be a professional athlete in sport. For that to be taken away, it's quite heart-wrenching.
Yeah, a little bit. I think there were certain times where I felt it, and other times where maybe I didn't realize I was feeling. I kind of went a bit. Explored life, let's say.
A bit relieved.
In that time, I explored life, did a lot of things that I wouldn't have been able to do.
Okay, tell us about that side of Darren, because we see the diligent Darren bodybuilder. Tell us about
partying, out every night, all this sort of stuff, getting in trouble. So I did a lot of that stuff, and maybe that was, looking back, maybe that wasn't, I wasn't as happy as I thought I was. But it was an adjustment period, going from where you were training every day of the week, living pretty strictly, to do all this stuff, to just being, completely free.
Being a normal teenager, a normal university student.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't long then till the identity was replaced with bodybuilding.
So how did you get into bodybuilding? It doesn't just happen overnight. Somebody inspired you, you saw something, started training in a different way, and how did that kind of develop? I had started going to the gym towards the end of playing sport, like a little bit, like maybe when I was 20, 21. Was that for recovery? Yeah, initially, and I had friends who were going, so I joined in and I was kind of interested, and then I joined a gym where I was just running initially, and then there was a family friend of ours who was, my parents were friends with his parents. He was a couple of years older than me, and he was a big guy. He was massively into the gym, and he sort of taught me a few things in there, and I got into it more and started doing it. And then there was someone approached me about doing a photo shoot, a fitness photo shoot, which I did, and I got in really good shape. And you did that all on your own, or did someone coach you for that?
No, I did that all on my own.
Okay.
And then someone in my gym just said something about a show in a couple of weeks, and I went and did this bodybuilding show, having no clue what it was, no clue how to pose, anything like this. But I did this show, placed like 3rd or 4th in the beginners or novice category or something. Was it a weight class, or was it just a novice? Just novice, I think. And then someone who was at that show, who was from Cork, where I was from, just obviously he was like, he thought I was good and good enough to reach out to me anyway and tell me that he'd come and help me. So I went down and met him, and he helped me for about 2 years then.
So from what age was the first show to the next one?
I was 23 when I did that first show.
And how much did you weigh? Do you know? Do you remember?
I can't remember that first one, but I know the next one I did Mr. Cork, and I did it.
Hold on a minute. There's a Mr. Cork.
There was, yeah. I think there still is. I'm not too sure. But I won the under 75 kilo bodybuilding.
Under 75 kilo?
Yeah.
That's literally lighter than I am right now.
Yeah, I think I weighed in at about 71 or 72 kilo.
And what do you weigh now? In kilo?
128, 130.
You literally just ate him. Okay, so that was when you were
24. Yeah, because I was too old for juniors, which is under 23.
Yeah.
So that's how I know I was definitely over.
Okay, so we did Mr. Cork. How do we feel about that? Is that when you fell in love with bodybuilding and were like, okay, I want to continue pursuing this, or this is something that I can be good at? Or was it a case of these are skills that I've learned from sport that I can actually transfer into this new sport? Or was it filling a void where sport had been taken away?
I think it was just filling a void. It gave me sort of a belonging to something. But like when you play in a sport like in hockey or something, hockey in Ireland, for example, it's a huge community and you're part of a community.
A team.
Yeah, well, not just the team, but everyone around. You know, like when I played in Dublin, for example, the club I played for were like the best in the country, but they were all very young. The oldest player on our team was 26 and the youngest being 17. So it was like a university team. We used to go out every Saturday night and all this. But when we go out on a Saturday night, if we went to a club, there'd be like all of the other clubs who were playing in Dublin would all be in there that night as well. There was a huge community, so there'd be like a couple of hundred of that community out, and you know, you leave all that behind and you just kind of search for that again. And I think that's where bodybuilding came in. You know, you have that gym community of people. I don't think it was, honestly, bodybuilding's never been about me pursuing something that I thought I was good at. You know, that came much longer. Like it was never, I never dreamt of getting to where I've got to, or I never dreamt of doing what I'm doing now. I just, you know, did it to belong somewhere, and vanity as well, wanted to look better than I did.
Yeah, after all the partying and, you know, the alcohol at uni. Okay. So fell in love with bodybuilding. This discipline is back again now. You're feeling like you belong in a community. I feel like we should touch on how we met, but I feel like people know that already. People always ask us, how do we meet? At the time that we met, you'd been bodybuilding, what, 3-4 years?
3.
Were you 26 when I met you?
25.
25, yeah. And we met at Body Power.
Yeah, 'cause I hadn't been bodybuilding. I was only after my second year competing, because that's when I got sponsored by BSN, after my second year competing.
After you'd done Mr. Cork?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So you were sponsored by BSN, came to Body Power, we met randomly. That's another whole story. I don't want to get into that. We can maybe touch on that in another episode. And I think, weren't you on prep when I actually met you? Or you were just starting prep?
Just starting, I think.
Yeah, because it was in the May.
I wasn't on prep when we first met, but when we met again later that summer, then I was on prep.
Well, when we officially met and started dating in the September, which is 9 years ago this month.
Yeah.
So that's when you were on prep. And then fast forward, you decided to move to the UK. We started living together. Our relationship moved very, very fast. Again, another episode, I'm sure. But you then obviously were competing, finished that show, and then bodybuilding continued on whilst you were in the UK. And that's when I kind of came on board with that. Like, obviously, I'd been on my own fitness journey and decided I want to do it. We both prepped during, was it 2015?
Yeah.
2015. And we both qualified for the British, which was UK BFF back then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, UK BFF British Finals. And then a year later, we got married. We actually got engaged during prep, which was a bit crazy. That was your idea, not mine. Yeah. And then a year later, we got married and we moved to Dubai. So I want to take a little bit of time and fast forward to Dubai. And I want to talk about the transition from bodybuilding in Ireland, bodybuilding in the UK. How did things change when you moved to Dubai?
I think by the time we got here, I'd kind of just dropped the idea of competing. I hadn't competed for a while. I think, you know, I'd obviously done that British finals, and then didn't compete for a while, and then was like, oh, I'll go do muscle modeler, one of those stupid kind of things.
Oh gosh, yeah, I remember that.
And then came to Dubai, and I had real no intentions of competing, because I wasn't that serious. You know, I was a bit of a up and down bodybuilder. I wasn't good. And when we moved here, it was just about work. You know.
And when we moved here, things were quite tough.
Yeah, so I was just PTing all the time, and that was where my focus was at.
And things were probably tough for us financially getting set up, but also emotionally and mentally for you at that time.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
I think everyone's heard so much of it. It's too long. I don't think we got time to go into all of that.
But I think it was that first year that we moved to Dubai that things were probably the hardest for us. That first year, 18 months.
Yeah, you know, it can be quite it was a much different place we moved to then than it is now. There wasn't the community that there is now. Someone from the UK or something comes over here now, there's, God, how many of us are there here? When we moved, there was no one, and we didn't know anyone to kind of help us with anything. And it was quite a lonely place. And, you know, I remember I was in the gym from 5 a.m. to sort of 8, 9 p.m. every night, and I didn't leave. I never saw outdoors. And it was just, it was hard. It was hard.
It was hard. And it brought a lot of things to light with your anxiety and your depression. And I know you've spoken openly about that on social media. Lots of people know about what you've been through. And I think going through that time and having those severe struggles and not having support from anyone other than me made it quite difficult for you to talk about the trauma that you faced and to manage the depression and anxiety you were feeling. Not only that, we were also living in a country where depression wasn't a thing that was spoken about, you know, and it's very hard to get help out here for those sort of things. So I know you've spoken about these things previously. So what I want to touch on is, how are you dealing with those feelings of anxiety and depression now? Because obviously I'm your wife and I've been through it all with you. And I can see where you are right now. I know how things were before. I know when we've had ups, we've had downs. And also I can see the signs of when you're feeling those things. But dealing with trauma as a male and openly talking about depression and anxiety as a very successful male bodybuilder and coach is not something that you hear often. So let's start with first, how do you deal with things on a daily basis now?
I think most of it comes down to now just being comfortable with who I am. I've eventually learned to just not like maybe accept myself is the wrong word to use, but you know, I'm just happy with my life. Like, I appreciate my life and what I have rather than feeling kind of lost and empty like the way I did before. And you know, constantly before, a lot of like what I was doing on a daily basis was trying to put up a front that I'm somebody or whatever. And then funnily enough, I became quite successful, and that started becoming not my reason for doing everything. And you know, looking back on a lot of it, you know, obviously I suffered a trauma, but I don't think that was the entirety of the issues that I had. I think it comes back to a lot of it was the identity, and a lot of what I did was trying to find my identity, and you know, never really finding happiness in what I did or who I was. And you know, it's just, I think there's not one way I've dealt with it. I think it's been a compound of a lot of things I've done over the last couple of years have just got me to a place now where I'm very happy and content.
And I think a lot of what we discussed earlier with your childhood, I think that, you know, trying to find your identity through sport and things like that, and that being taken away, I know you spent some time reflecting on a lot of that and realised that, like you said, it wasn't the trauma alone that you suffered, but a lot of the things that happened in your childhood that kind of form the basis of this need for gratification, this need to feel like you're someone, to, you know, have yourself put on a pedestal, because for your whole life, pretty much, before we even met, it was always expected that Darren would do great things. Darren's going to become this in sport. Darren's going to do this. And there was a lot of pressure on you, whether you were...
Yeah, it wasn't
whether you were open to it or not.
I put it on myself as well. I don't blame anyone really for that. It was myself too. I put those pressures on myself that, whether that's just from the upbringing I had, where sport had such a huge importance, and you know, obviously as a kid, you know, you come back and you've won a big tournament, you got selected for Muncie, your parents are delighted, and they throw, like, my parents were always very supportive of sport, so when I did well in sport, they were like really happy. And I think, you know, maybe that kind of put in my head that
Absolutely.
You know, purpose is down to achievement, and it really doesn't matter. But
and the reality is you achieved in other things academically too as well. So,
yeah.
Okay, so on a day-to-day basis, how do you feel in terms of your anxiety, depression? I would say more so for somebody listening that maybe is going through a similar thing. Do you know what your triggers are. Like, what are some of the things that you see on social media or happen to you in your daily life that kind of trigger those moments of self-doubt, self-worth, and maybe take you back to a place that you don't want to be in?
Not so much now. I can't remember the last time I've felt anxious or anything. A lot of it used to be, not feeling successful and feeling like others were doing better than me and wanting to be in a better place. And that came from always just looking up here rather than just looking inwardly and seeing where I am, and not kind of just ignoring everything good I had going on myself. So now it's on a daily basis. I feel happy. I feel content. I love what's around me. Family, dogs. I'm a simple person. I'm not flashy or anything. I just, a good day for me is, I wake up feeling good. I go to the gym, have a good training session, come back. All my clients, their check-ins, they're all happy with how they're doing. Seeing good results, and then that puts me. I'm in a good mood, and then I can just sit down, unwind for the night, and
Just chill with the dogs.
yeah.
So basically, it's coming away from that, looking outward, and like you said, just looking inward and reflecting on what's most important to you. Coming back to your core values, the things that make you happiest are actually the less extravagant things in life.
Yeah.
And it's quite ironic saying that when we live in a very extravagant place like Dubai. And I think people look in on our life and other people that live here and think it's all razzle dazzle, all shiny, all new, all, really flashy. But reality is, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. That's the way I like it. It's always hard. Like, I do get a lot of people ask me, who are suffering and going through anxiety, and like, what do I do? It's a very hard question to answer because one, I don't really know what I do. Like I said, it's a compound of a lot of things. It's getting my headspace my head in a better place, and like, I guess addressing what's causing you to feel anxious. I'm someone who doesn't like to be thrown off my routine, but I've got better at that. I've kind of put myself in positions like gradually where, I let something not be perfect.
Yeah.
And then I recognize, oh, well, nothing bad happened. And now I'm in a place where I don't really, that doesn't stress me at all,
Because I think so many people know you as disciplined Darren.
Yeah. And I used to be, like, it would be like if we were traveling or something and I was late for a meal, that would really get to me. Now I'm like, if I'm traveling, who cares?
As long as you get the meal in wherever you can.
Yeah.
So tell us about that then, the transition from being not really worried about bodybuilding and then kind of getting back into it, somehow turning pro and then qualifying for the Olympia as the first ever Irish bodybuilder to do so. Like, that's quite a transition. So now you're Mr. Chill, which is awesome to see. And I'm very happy as your wife to see you more relaxed. But during that time period, would you say that was when you were the most disciplined, most focused, and maybe less present?
Probably, yeah. A lot of my focus went into that. And, I became obsessed with perfect. And I don't mean myself portraying perfect, but myself doing perfect. My ability to do everything to 100%, like down to the point, like, no, not a gram of food over, not a gram extra, cardio, everything as hard as I could, training as hard as I could, sleep, everything spot on. And, then seeing the results of that, like being, I may not be genetically the most gifted, but I can work harder than anyone else. And I've always had that attitude, and that goes back right into sport, that I was like, if I didn't make something fit, all right, I'll turn up and I'll be the fittest.
Yeah.
So now it's like, right, I'll be the hardest worker. And I did that, and that was, and that led into then that anxiety of, having to be perfect and having to portray that all the time.
So when you let the guard down, you were less perfect. Things still worked out.
That's when I struggle. I would always notice that, I would be good when everything was going good with what I was doing. And then when that would slow down then I would struggle. And behind the scenes initially, it wasn't all perfect. Struggling with food, stuff like this,
Would you say that you've had a poor relationship with food in the past?
Yeah, for sure. Initially, I think a lot of people in this industry have done. And then, working through that, and then getting lucky, I think, as well.
You say it's more luck than the sheer hard work that you put in to get your pro card? Yeah,
I was as the best I could have been, and I had a really good transformation from what I was, the year before to when I went from within the IFBB, never even being in a first call out program. Like the year before, I did Ireland and New Zealand, and I was like last in both. And I came back the next year, went to New Zealand and won the overall.
Yeah.
Now I look back at the physique I won that with, and it's not amazing, but it was enough for me to win that show. But it gave me that platform then to continue with my hard work. You know, I was someone that was like, right, now I need to up-level it again. And I put in the work and made sure that I then had a physique that was worthy of being a pro.
And then obviously qualifying for the Olympia was never on the cards.
No.
Flying to Texas, the plan was just to compete as a pro, was it not?
Yeah, like I had done, like obviously after turning pro, I went and did my pro debut was actually in the UK, where I tanked it. I think I finished like 9th or something. That was the one where I had that bicep issue. I think like the day before we flew, my bicep was the size of a balloon. And we were back here, did the show, flew back, and I was in hospital with the drips and all sorts. And then I was a long time then to my next show. I took some time away, went through some stuff like...
That was like September, October time, and then it was not until the following March, April?
Yeah, it was over a year away from stage. You know, and I went through two different coaches in that time, and ended up back with Jamie for the next time I competed.
Yeah.
No, I never competed with those other coaches that I was with. I did learn a lot from them, and it was definitely something I don't regret, because I did learn. Two very experienced coaches, and they taught me different things, but ultimately they weren't the best for me to compete with. And then I was going through a bit of a downtime, like a bit of a lull in my sort of my own personal life, you know, not feeling too great, feeling a bit lost again, and ended up talking with Jamie again, and he helped me because he's very similar to me in terms of we both just love training, and he's loved doing the daily, and we're both hard workers, and he kind of got me to sort of forget about all the pressures of it and just go back to doing it for the reason that, you know, you should be doing it, and just go back and train. And I remember his words were, just go into the gym and train however the fuck you feel. Just do what you want to do. Train hard and enjoy it. And then did that for a week, and then things started responding. And then it was like, right, get back on your nutrition properly. Things started responding. And over a course of about 3 or 4 weeks, I changed dramatically. And then in that period, I had a bit before that, I applied to do the Arnold's UK, the first one. I didn't know if I wanted to do it or not, but I applied in case I did. And then I remember being with him on a Saturday, and he was looking at me. He was like, "You should do a show." And we were kind of like, "Oh." And on the way home, I didn't. I found out I didn't get selected to do the Arnold's, and was quite upset. And I was like, "Okay, obviously I do want to compete again. It's not that I haven't lost the passion for this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be upset about not getting selected." So I just looked at the thing, and it was a show in Spain 5 weeks later. I messaged Jamie, and he was like, "Yeah, fuck it, let's do it." So I did a 5-week prep for Spain, and I got there, and it was the best I ever looked, and, you know, I got some really positive feedback. That was a huge show. There was like some top Olympians in it. For anyone who will know, obviously Ramon Dino, who's like one of the best in the world. He finished second at that show. Fabian Mayer won it with like Medelman. There was like 7-8 Olympians in that show. And I got really good feedback from the judges, and from some people I really respect in the industry as well messaged me, and that night with you, I was like, okay, if I was able to look like this in 5 weeks, and I know I'm not as conditioned as I need to be, I know I can look better. I looked at the calendar, I seen in like five weeks further, there was a show in Texas and a show in San Antonio the following week. So I was like, right, I'll keep going, I'll do these 2 shows. So I said to Jamie was like, yeah, let's do them, cool. You know, it was never about going over there looking for an Olympia qualification or anything. It was just about me wanting to be like, I knew I could display better, and I wanted to be my best. And that was all it was, you know. And we were like, oh, if you can get top 5 out in America, that'd be great. You know, so when I got there and I did that Texas show, and after prejudging, everyone thought I'd won that show, the first one. Ended up placing 3rd in that, which I was delighted. I came off stage and I was absolutely delighted. I placed 3rd in the pro show in America. And then it was like, people were like telling me, you should have won that show. And I was a bit like afterwards, I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, all right, I know I have San Antonio. So I went on to San Antonio, and the rest is history.
Qualified for the Olympia, first ever Irish man to do it. Huge achievement, to the point where you got it tattooed on your wrist.
Yeah.
Means something to you. Yeah, the stamp is there. So obviously, again, went into the Olympia not having any expectations. was just happy to be there and to look your best. By which point started working with a new coach. And since that Olympian now, you're on a completely different journey and actually coming away from classic physique and moving into open. So I have a couple more questions to do with bodybuilding I'm curious about is what are your goals moving forward now as an open bodybuilder? And what are your goals for your athletes? Because you've actually coached many athletes to the Olympus stage as well.
Yeah, like it's back. Like it's like I'm repeating my younger years. You know, I'm doing it myself, but at the same time, I'm equally just as passionate about coaching others to it. Probably this time around, I'm probably a little bit more passionate about my clients than myself, especially now, having achieved everything I've done, and I kind of know that's the pinnacle of it for me. You know, I'm doing open bodybuilding just because, again, it's about me being able to display my best. And you know, we knew last year prepping for the Olympia, the weight cap was very hard for me to make, and became evident after the Olympia that it was pretty much impossible for me to make now. We could do it, but I would then be sacrificing the look. Like I remember having the conversation with Cal, was like, yeah, we can get you to the weight cap. It'll be hard. You'll probably still win shows, but you won't look your best. And when he said that to me, I was like, okay, I'm done with that. And it's a big task for me moving into open because, you know, it's obviously no weight cap against the biggest there is. So I'm fully aware that, you know, I probably won't make it back to the Olympia and in open, but at least I can step on stage and be my best and, you know, showcase what I can and sort of give my athletes some inspiration as well, you know.
And do it
that's
because
what
you
it's about for me.
enjoy it.
Is really like I like to set the tone, you know. I don't ask or don't tell my athletes to do anything that I wouldn't do, and a lot of them they all recognise that as well. You know, they see I do it on a daily, and they do it.
And it seems like there's less pressure now, and you're just doing it because you enjoy it again.
Yeah, like I'm just able to go into the gym and do what I love. You know, I'm not holding back. Like a large part of last year, I always had that. And I would say it to Cal a lot, was I feel really frustrated because, you know, I'm not able to eat enough, or I'm doing so much cardio to keep my weight down that I don't feel like I can do what I really love doing. That's training in the gym
and getting bigger.
Yeah. Well, not even getting bigger. It's just I'm a results based person, and you know, for me, it's if I'm going to the gym and like those numbers aren't moving up, I'm like, oh. Whereas I like going in and like seeing, like, you know, lifting heavier every week.
Yeah. So you mentioned that your clients are probably the priority for you at the moment. You've coached some amazing athletes in the past, and like I said, many to the Olympia stage. Who's exciting you at the moment on your team?
Everyone.
If you don't want to name names, you don't have to.
Everyone for different reasons, you know. You know, obviously, I'm fortunate enough to work with some of the best. You know, I've had several Olympia athletes, pro athletes, but I'm just as excited for my younger guys. You know, I had a guy do his first show 2 weeks ago in the Natural show here, and it's, you know, his excitement for doing that and his pride in what he achieved is just as big as, you know, Josh qualifying and going to the Olympia with me. That was a special moment for me. I think that's another first. I don't think anyone else has ever done that either.
Stood on stage in the same class
as their client. You know, I coached someone who competed against me at the Olympia. So yeah, that was an honour. And you know, Josh is still with me, and we've made plans for this year coming up, which is obviously very exciting. I'm looking forward to that.
And you coach a lot of females as well.
Loads. You know, I've had more Olympians in the female category and more pros in the female category than I have males.
Quick question.
That comes mainly because I have coaching males is easy. It's pretty basic.
I was just about to ask that. Which you prefer, male or female?
Both are exciting and both are good. Like, but I think it's more of a niche being a good female coach, because a lot of people will try and coach females, but not many understand the intricacies of coaching female. They're not just midi men.
And wasn't your master's degree linked to that as well?
I wrote a thesis on female hormones. That was related to pregnancy and nutrition related to pregnancy.
Okay, so we're almost coming to an end. I know we've been in here quite a long time, and I'm keeping an eye on the time, but I did open up my poll on Instagram, and so I had quite a few questions come through, but I thought I would select a few of them and see how you fare. I did actually ask Darren if he wanted to know earlier what these questions were to prepare for them, and he said, no, I'll just wing it. So here you go. We'll start with a light-hearted one. What is your biggest regret in life?
I don't think you can say you have regrets if you're happy where you are now. And I'm happy where I am now, so everything I've done has led me to here. So I can't really regret anything, to be perfectly honest.
Because without paving the path and doing those things, you wouldn't be here.
If you have regrets, in your life, it means to say that you're not happy where you are now.
I like it. Good answer. This one's an interesting one, kind of targeted at both of us. What to avoid as a couple that bodybuild together? What are the challenges?
I don't know.
Hello, you coached me for most part of
and I don't think it was I think for the obviously coaching you, on reflection, we talked about it a lot, and that's why you ended up moving to Cal, was because it's very hard to coach someone who's at your level as well. You either have to take away from yourself to coach them, or take away from them to pursue yourself. Especially when we're both at the level we're at. I felt like you just needed someone to give you 100% attention and not be focused on them as well. With me,
and it's hard to be subjective.
Yeah, definitely, it's hard to be subjective sometimes. Obviously, emotions come into play.
You'd get more emotional after shows than I would sometimes.
No, but for 3 weeks out from a show and you're struggling, and I'm like, you gotta drop your food.
So definitely some challenges when we coach
and
each other.
It's allowed us to be a bit more chill, like in certain things, like we've spoken about, like just being able to be husband and wife, and if you decide to not eat your food plan, it doesn't bother me. Whereas when I was coaching, I'd have to say something to you, and it would cause
some arguments. You're trying to help me on this podcast.
No, not like you do it all the time, but we can just be husband and wife, and it's like that there's no judgment on my side or anything, and vice versa.
Yeah, true. I don't know if I should. Favorite thing you like about each other? I haven't prepared for this one. Neither of you, so.
Probably your drive.
My drive, as in I'm the best driver, obviously.
No, your dedication, and your passion.
Okay, and mine would be the opposite for you. Not because you're not driven, but I actually like how calm and chilled you make me feel. I think we balance each other out. I'm always go, go, go. I'm always on the treadmill running really fast, whereas you're very good at just getting me to stop, breathe, be calm, give me a cuddle and relax. So I think that's good. Okay, I'm going to leave the other questions because I know we're almost running out of time, but I have a couple of closing questions for you. And I think I'm trialing these with you. You're the first live guest I've had, so we'll see how they go. If they tank, I might change them. But I would say, first question. What has been some of the biggest kind of pinnacle moments in your life where your mindset has shifted? Can you remember times where it's like it was a shift in mindset and life took a different kind of route for you?
Certainly that moment that Scott talked about earlier when I was 13 and didn't get selected for a team. And it was
the bleep test.
Yeah.
You talk about it a lot.
Yeah, so that, and that taught me that, anything you want, you can work for, you have the control, you have the power to do it, obviously to a certain extent. Meeting you.
Really?
Yeah, before that I was a bit, whimsical, a bit like all over the place.
Bit of a play, you mean?
No, not like that. But no real life goals as such. I was just ticking along.
Okay.
Life got a bit more serious, I guess.
You grew up when you met me.
Yeah. And then coming to Dubai, forcing me to face my issues and my own demons.
It was a big one for both of us, for sure. One piece of advice that you would give someone that is struggling with their mindset, depression, anxiety, if you could say one thing that has made a difference for you that you would offer to someone else?
It's always such a hard question to ask because everyone's struggles are different. I think for me a huge thing was just being able to find step away from it. I used to always say to myself, if this was my friend going through it, what would I say? Step away from the situation as if it's not you and look at it subjectively. 9 times out of 10 you'll find that your anxiety and how worked up you're getting is
pretty irrational.
Irrational, yeah.
That's a good piece of advice. Taking a step back and trying to anyway, at least when you're in a calmer state. And final question. Let's see if this is a good one for the podcast for you and other guests. What would you want to leave behind as your legacy? If you could leave something behind for other people to say, Darren did this, what would you want it to be? Not that I'm writing your obituary or anything.
I don't think I've done anything that I did more than just how I did it and just that he was a good person.
Thank you. Gosh, that wraps it up. Do you like my notepad, by the way?
Lovely.
Thank you so much for Firstly, being such a supportive husband, this podcast wouldn't be where it is today without Darren. I think many of you know that I am a very driven and ambitious businesswoman, entrepreneur. I have multiple platforms I'm on, but where I've got to today wouldn't be here without this man. And he's been a massive supporter of mine. And to a degree, I would say been my business mentor. Whenever I've had any questions about business and had an idea, he'll tell me, no, that's rubbish. Or no, that's a really good one. Or have you tried thinking about this? So massive thank you to you for that. And also for being my first live podcast guest. I really appreciate it. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, please do not forget to like, subscribe, share, do all of the good things, drop a comment down below. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, please, please, please share it on your Instagram stories. Tag me, tag Darren, let us know what you thought. And we will be back with another episode in the future, coming very, very soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.